Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Imagine you are huddled in a cramped, frigid apartment in Moscow. The year is 1964. Outside, the wind of the Moshkova River rattles the window panes, but inside, the only sound is the rhythmic, heavy breathing of a man terrified of his own shadow. You are an agency asset, and in your trembling hands is a device that shouldn't exist. A high-speed keyer. You aren't just sending a report, you are gambling your life on the hope that the laws of physics can hide you from the KGB trucks circling the block with their rooftop antennas spinning like hungry predators. The room feels heavy with the scent of old dust and cold iron. Your fingers are numb, fumbling with the magnetic tape loop that holds your life's worth of gathered secrets. Every floorboard creak in the hallway outside sounds like a death sentence. You can almost feel the invisible net of Soviet surveillance tightening, a web of listeners stretching across the 11 time zones of the Soviet Union, all waiting for you to make a single mistake. The wallpaper, peeling and yellowed by decades of tobacco smoke, seems to lean in, eavesdropping on your frantic heartbeat. You press your ear against the cool, vibrating casing of the transmitter, listening for the internal hum of capacitors charging, a sound so faint it's more of a feeling in your jawbone than a noise in the room. You watch the small red needle on the battery gauge flicker toward the ready mark, the only light in the suffocating darkness of the flat. There is a strange electric tension in the air, a physical pressure that mounts as the device prepares to scream into the vacuum. You know that for the next few heartbeats, you will be the eye of a storm that spans continents, a single point of data piercing through the laden sky of the Soviet interior. You press the transmit button. There is no long rhythmic tap, tap, tap of Morse code. There is only a single violent burst of energy, a chirp so fast it sounds like a glitch in the universe. You feel the adrenaline spike in your chest, a sharp contrast to the biting cold of the room. The equipment beneath your palms vibrates with a brief, intense surge of electricity, a phantom warmth that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. You have just dumped an entire page of text into the ionosphere in the time it takes to blink. You aren't just an operative. You are a ghost flickering in and out of the electromagnetic spectrum. The silence that follows is deafening. You wait paralyzed, watching the glow of a street lamp hit the frost on the glass, expecting the door to be kicked in at any second. But the air remains still. The silent burst has done its job. Somewhere, thousands of miles away, a massive receiving array has plucked your millisecond of data from the cosmic noise. You're still alive, still invisible, a shadow participant in a war fought with light and logic. Why SNOWCONE? Within the Directorate of Science and Technology, the project was named to reflect the cone-shaped radiation pattern of the specialized portable antennas used in the field, combined with the snow or white noise static that the burst resembled if intercepted by standard equipment. It was a clandestine communications project aimed at solving the transmission duration problem. The more time you spent on the air, the faster you were caught. SNOWCONE turned a long, dangerous conversation into a single, cold, crystalline flake of data. To understand the engineering of the invisible, we must look at the declassified mechanics of the burst. SNOWCONE was a primary communications project managed by the Office of Communications. It utilized high-frequency radio waves to bounce signals off the ionosphere. The program achieved compression ratios of up to 300 to 1. SNOWCONE utilized the AS3 portable burst transmitter. The system allowed a 100-word message to be sent in under 1 second. It utilized magnetic tape loops to record messages at slow speeds and play them back at high speeds. The program operated out of base stations in Cyprus and Okinawa. SNOWCONE utilized one-time pads, OTP, for encryption before the burst was compressed. The system reduced the effectiveness of Soviet direction-finding teams by 90%. It utilized frequency agility, allowing the burst to jump between preset channels. It integrated with the GRA71 burst encoder. The program utilized time diversity transmissions to bypass atmospheric interference. It tracked the solar cycle to determine the best time for ionospheric skipping. SNOWCONE transmitters were disguised as consumer electronics like portable radios. The program utilized circularly polarized antennas to minimize signal fading. It utilized automatic repeat request logic to ensure the burst was received intact. SNOWCONE allowed for blinded transmissions where the agent didn't need to hear the base station. The system utilized thermal paper printouts for the recipients to decipher the expanded signal. It reduced the power requirement of field radios, allowing for smaller batteries. SNOWCONE was utilized by the stay-behind networks in Eastern Europe. The program experimented with satellite relay burst transmissions in the late 60s. It utilized phase shift keying, PSK, to increase the data density of each burst. SNOWCONE documented the multi-path distortion caused by signal bouncing. The system utilized pre-emphasis to boost the signal above the background noise floor. SNOWCONE was replaced by the STEER satellite communication system in the 1970s. The project developed the KE8 keyer, which used a spring-loaded clockwork mechanism to ensure precise transmission speed. SNOWCONE bursts were so fast they often bypassed the mechanical relays and older Soviet monitoring equipment. The agency used meteor burst communications, bouncing SNOWCONE signals off the ionized trails of falling space rocks. It utilized harmonic filtering to prevent the transmitter from bleeding into civilian television bands. SNOWCONE antennas were often woven into the fabric of everyday coats or disguised as washing lines. The program identified that midnight bursts were the most successful due to the cooling of the D layer of the atmosphere. SNOWCONE signals were sometimes mistaken by amateur radio operators as solar flares or lightning strikes. The system used bit stuffing to ensure the receivers stayed synchronized during the high-speed dump. It utilized cryogenic batteries and experimental field units to provide high current pulses in sub-zero climates. The program tested the under-ice transmission of SNOWCONE signals from submarines in the Arctic. SNOWCONE was the first agency project to utilize silicon-controlled rectifiers for high-speed switching. The receiver sites used specialized liquid-cooled vacuum tubes to handle the massive signal gain required. It utilized voice compression, where an operative's speech was sped up until it was unrecognizable before transmission. The project documented that a SNOWCONE burst contained more energy in 1 millisecond than a 50-watt bulb uses in an hour. It utilized angle of arrival masking by reflecting signals off specific mountain ranges in the Balkans. The program tested subaqueous antennas for agents operating near the Black Sea. SNOWCONE units were hidden inside hollowed-out Zenit cameras and Svevma film canisters, SVEMA. The system utilized parity checking to detect if a single bit had been flipped by cosmic rays. SNOWCONE was the primary comms link for the U-2 pilot survival kits. The program recorded that a single burst could contain up to 5,000 characters of encoded text. It utilized negative resistance oscillators to maintain frequency stability under extreme vibration. SNOWCONE signals were encrypted using a double transposition cipher before compression. The agency hired professional musicians to help identify the tonal qualities of the burst. It utilized adaptive equalization to clean the signal of atmospheric ghosting. SNOWCONE transmitters included a self-destruct thermite charge for use in case of capture. The project utilized directional nulls to ensure the signal was only sent toward friendly territory. SNOWCONE was used to communicate with the Glomar Explorer during the raising of the Soviet K-129 sub. The program utilized multiplexing, where 3 different messages were woven into a single burst. It documented that Soviet agents tried to jam the burst by flooding the airwaves with heavy metal music. SNOWCONE units were small enough to be hidden in the heel of a standard leather dress shoe. A quote from a declassified CIA communications handbook dated 1965. The greatest threat to a stay-behind agent is the length of his transmission. SNOWCONE reduces that threat to a fraction of a second. Quote from a declassified internal memo from the Office of Communications. We are essentially trying to hide a shout in the middle of a thunderclap. A quote from a CIA technical director, but again, the name isn't provided, it's redacted. If the KGB doesn't know you're there until you're already gone, you've won the airwaves. Quote from a declassified CIA DSNT intelligence briefing. The SNOWCONE technique effectively renders the enemy's current direction-finding technology obsolete. A quote from a declassified technical journal of the Office of Signals. Reliability in the high-frequency spectrum is no longer a matter of power, but of timing. A quote from a declassified internal agency strategy paper on denied area operations. The ability to compress time is the ultimate clandestine advantage. And a quote from a declassified training manual for field keyers. A message that exists for only a heartbeat is a message that cannot be caught. End quote. Within the operational security assessment of SNOWCONE, the section regarding compromised frequency schedules is blacked out for nearly 60 pages. These redactions are enforced under Exemption B1 for national security. I suspect these pages detail the specific instances where Soviet wideband recording stations managed to capture burst and backtrace them to specific safe houses. I think the redacted portions cover the subcarrier leaks, unintended signals that the AS3 transmitters emitted, which allowed the KGB to identify the specific manufacturer of the device. Most significantly, the redactions likely hide the double agent protocols, how the agency handled burst transmissions from assets they suspected had been turned. And I'm not the only one with theories. When a signal is designed to be invisible, the mind fills in the blanks. For instance, there's the numbers station theory. Some speculate that many of the famous creepy number stations heard on shortwave are actually SNOWCONE triggers, beacons designed to tell an agent exactly where to fire their burst. Then there's the time slip theory, a persistent one that claims that the extreme compression of SNOWCONE bursts occasionally caused signal echoes from the future, with receivers picking up messages that hadn't been set yet due to ionospheric anomalies. Then there's the voice of God speculation. Some believe the CIA used SNOWCONE technology to hijack Soviet radio broadcasts for a split second, inserting subconscious burst messages into the ears of millions of Soviet citizens. And then there's the Black Knight satellite theory. It's a fringe one which suggests the CIA wasn't bouncing signals off the ionosphere, but off an ancient alien satellite in polar orbit that could clean and retransmit SNOWCONE bursts with zero interference. Was SNOWCONE a success? Tactically, it was a triumph of survivability. Before SNOWCONE, an agent's time on target for radio was measured in minutes, more than enough time for a fox hunting van to pinpoint their window. SNOWCONE changed that metric to milliseconds. It allowed for the survival of the highest value assets in most denied areas of the world. It turned the signal-to-noise ratio into a weapon of its own, proving that the most secure signal is the one that is too fast to be identified as a signal at all. This tactical shift saved countless of lives and ensured a steady stream of intelligence from behind the Iron Curtain when other methods were failing. Furthermore, the tactical versatility of the SNOWCONE hardware allowed it to be integrated into everything from embassy diplomatic bags to deep cover dead drops. By reducing the weight and power consumption of the transmitters, the agency enabled agents to be more mobile and less tethered to stationary power sources. This created a ghost grid of communications that moved with the assets, making it impossible for Soviet counterintelligence to map a static network. The tactical legacy of SNOWCONE is the realization that in espionage, speed is the most effective form of armor. Strategically, It shifted the war from listening to processing. It forced the Soviet Union to invest billions in wide-spectrum recording and automated analysis, effectively starting an arms race in digital signal processing. It proved that technical superiority and information density could overcome geographical and manpower disadvantages. However, it also led to a strategic over-reliance on technology where the agency sometimes prioritized the security of the transmission over the reliability of the source, a flaw that would be exploited in later decades when compromised tech led to the rolling up of several key networks. Strategically, the project also bridged the gap between the era of shortwave radio and the era of satellite communication. It served as a vital proof of concept for high-speed data transfer that would later define the space race's intelligence component. Strategically, SNOWCONE forced the opposition to realize that the information frontier was no longer about holding territory, but about holding the spectrum. This shift in doctrine meant that the Cold War moved into the realm of computational speed, a battlefield where the West held a significant industrial advantage. The strategic outcome was a permanent shift in how nations view the security of their data in transit. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, as you may have guessed, this led to quite a few, such as data compression algorithms, which were pioneered to fit 100 words into a millisecond burst. Today, the intelligence community uses this to squeeze massive surveillance feeds through narrow satellite pipes. The military applies it to low probability of intercept battlefield communications. For humanity, this breakthrough is the reason you can stream high-definition video or send a photo via text message. It is the science of making data small enough to travel fast. Then there's the packet-sized communication, which was refined in the SNOWCONE era to ensure that a burst could be reassembled correctly at the other end. The military uses this for resilient mesh networking in combat zones. The intelligence community uses it to mask data as normal web traffic. For the world, this is the foundational logic of the internet itself, breaking information into small manageable packets that find their own way through the network to be rebuilt at their destination. Automatic repeat request protocols, ARQ. It was perfected to handle the ionospheric fade that often ruins SNOWCONE bursts. The military uses this to ensure error-free command and control in electromagnetically noisy environments. For humanity, this is the technology that makes your Wi-Fi work. It is the handshake between your router and your phone that checks for missing data and asks for it again instantly, ensuring your connection remains stable even when the signal is weak. And then spread, spectrum, and frequency hopping. The techniques were tested during the later SNOWCONE phases to hide the burst across multiple frequencies. The intelligence community uses this to prevent signal jamming by adversaries. The military uses it for secure tactical data links. For the public, this is the core technology behind Bluetooth and modern cellular networks, allowing millions of people to use the same airwaves at the same time without their signals crossing. We live in a world that is constantly screaming, but the most important messages are still the ones sent in a whisper. SNOWCONE was the moment we realized that speed is the ultimate form of silence. It was a project that turned the chaotic energy of the shortwave band into a surgical tool of the clandestine state. The reality of SNOWCONE is that it redefined the geography of the signal. It proved that a basement in Moscow could be closer to Langley than a street corner in DC, provided you knew how to jump through the ionosphere. This project established the precedent that in the age of information, the winner isn't the one with the loudest voice, but the one with the fastest chirp. As we move deeper into a world where every vibration is tracked and every packet is analyzed, remember the lesson of the silent burst. In the cracks of the airwaves, there is still room for secrets. The war of the invisible signal never truly ended. It just moved to a frequency we can no longer hear. SNOWCONE was the first chapter in the book of the invisible web, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all for 99.9% of a second. In a world of listeners, the fastest talker wins. Your metadata is the chirp of your digital life. Keep it short. The air is full of whispers. You just have to know how to listen to the static. And remember, a burst of truth is worth an hour of lies. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine Tiger Pro, the specialized software used for the forensic analysis of intercepted digital signals. We'll look at the binary autopsy, the tracking of the digital fingerprint, and the reality of a war fought through the code itself. Join us next time for The Digital Hunter. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.